Hey, it's Dr. Rebecca Troy. Welcome to our webinar, Retraining the Dyslexic Brain, 5 Steps to Normal Reading and Beyond. It's great to have you here today. I'm a cut to the chase kind of gal, so I'm just going to dive right in and start sharing the good stuff. We've got some really fantastic content for you today, and I'm really excited you're here. So this webinar is for any parent, teacher, or guardian who's looking out for a child with dyslexia, whether your child has been struggling with this disorder for years or if this has just become an obvious, more recent problem. Either way, this training is for you. And I want you to pay really close attention because this is going to be the best 45 minutes you've ever spent coming up with a plan to support your child's reading. In the next 45 minutes, we're going to talk about how to make significant neural changes and literally rewire the brain of your child with dyslexia and prevent years of unnecessary struggle in school. We'll talk about how your child can get ahead of their peers in reading, even if they've historically struggled with reading performance. How to use 5 simple steps to retrain your child's dyslexic brain without worrying if they're getting this type of support at school. We'll talk about how to simplify the process, get focused, and create stronger neurological connections so that the reading issues can be resolved more quickly. How to better create a belief system for what's possible and the work that needs to be done in order to succeed. I promise you, if you stick around, I'll give you a step-by-step guide to retrain your child's brain to hear and respond differently to language so they can achieve normally, have a successful academic career, gain admittance to any lead institution, and have a happy, successful life. I know you might think that this is crazy right now, but I've worked with students that were able to be remediated in 14 days. I want to invite you to stretch your limits on what you think is possible. And let's dive in. So I think it's always important to start here. I'm here to share some really important information and be honest. I don't have a magical pill I can give your child. I do have a way to overcome this disorder, but it doesn't happen without hard work, and it isn't going to happen for people who aren't serious about getting results. I can promise your child is capable of awesome results, but I can also promise you this webinar is for people who really want to do something about dyslexia. But before we get into all the good stuff, let me check in with you quickly and see where you're at. Does this sound like you? Are you frustrated with how far behind your child is becoming in reading, but you don't see any viable options or any solutions in sight? Do you know that reading is becoming increasingly difficult with every grade that your child goes through, but you have so much going on right now, and your days and evenings are filled to the brim, and you just don't know how you could fit in one more thing? Are you worried that you'll invest your time and money into another too good to be true program that your child will not find success in, no matter how much money that you spend? Are you concerned your child isn't even going to want to work on reading? Do you currently sit at the kitchen table at night, your child takes out their backpack, puts their homework on the table, and the tears just start streaming down their face because they physically can't complete their homework tasks and they're so incredibly frustrated? You are incredibly frustrated. Is your child already doing the thing where they're getting up for school saying, "Mom, I have a stomach ache, Dad, I have a headache," so that they don't have to go? Are they already saying things to you like, "I feel stupid"? Is your child's teacher saying, "They just don't seem to be making progress and no intervention at school seems to be working"? Do you secretly know that when your child's books get more and more challenging and the school content gets harder and harder, that they're no longer going to feel like school is a place for them? Do you realize that every class they enter and every job and job training requires reading? And does it just hurt your heart to know how badly every single moment of that is going to feel because your child knows that they can't? Do you know everything in your child's life would be better if they could read? If any of those things sound like you, then I've got good news. None of those things are the real problem. Those are just the symptoms. The real problem is you haven't made what I call the shifts. But I promise you, once you make them, your child's brain is going to function differently. They're going to have neural pathways and connections that they never had before in the areas of their brain that control reading. Your child will be able to take out that homework, put it on the kitchen table, and be able to see and manipulate sounds as a reader does when they're sounding out words. They're going to have more confidence, they'll do better in school, they'll have an improved attitude, they'll stop feeling stupid, they know nothing's wrong with them. Once you make these shifts, you'll feel that you have a positive support structure. And once you teach your child's brain how to properly process language, it's like a puzzle piece goes into place. Once you teach your child's brain to function like a normal reader, it's like a door unlocks. And your child sprints wildly, furiously in the direction of their dreams. They feel a part of the classroom, they feel normal, they can read. But before we go too much further, let me take 2 seconds to introduce myself so you know who I am and why you should listen to me. So I'm an educational researcher and reading interventionist. I've been a public educator for the last 18 years, which means that I know the ins and outs of public education. I know what's typically offered for assessments and screening. I understand what the core instruction is typically like for reading, and I also deeply understand what often happens for the most struggling readers in the system. I'm a nationally board certified teacher in early and middle literacy, and for 10 years I've trained teachers to become reading specialists. These are not people that had any kind of reading experience, but these were science teachers, Phi-Ed teachers, foreign language teachers that I was able to show how to teach reading without reading experience. I have a doctorate in education, and for the last 15 years, I've directed and created a successful reading intervention program that's changed thousands of high schoolers' lives and transformed thousands of brains. So let me tell you the story of how I discovered the 5 shifts. I've been studying neuroscience and reading disability for a while now. I spent the last 15 years working with and creating a program for high school kids that still struggled to read. And not surprisingly, we learned that nearly all of them had dyslexia. As I was building this program, I just recently finished my degree as a reading specialist, and I was the understudy of one of the first neuroscience researchers in the reading field. I took what I learned, which were the top strategies in the field, the best of the best, and began implementing a very select few high-impact strategies with these students. And I was absolutely stunned at what happened next. By the second week of having intensive research-based intervention, I had 2 kids eliminate their dyslexic behaviors. That was 10 class periods. By the end of the first semester, every kid in the classroom had eliminated their dyslexic behaviors. And these were kids that had nearly 8 academic years of feeling like a failure, struggling to complete their homework, believing they were incapable. And within weeks, not only did their reading performance change, but their attitude changed. Their behavior changed, and so did their performance in other classes. I had teachers coming down and say, "What are you doing in this reading class?" The principal was so stunned at what had happened that he asked if we could replicate this and teach other teachers so we could identify and eliminate every kid in the school with a dyslexic struggling reader profile. The following school year, we had one of these classes running every hour of the day, and he committed to 3 full-time staff, which I had trained to teach a full schedule of only these courses. Our results were incredible. We've had dozens of schools across the state and region reach out to ask what we were doing and how I could help coach them in doing the same. And I think it's fair and it's honest to say that not every kid found success and that sometimes other things got in the way. But over time, the overwhelming majority was incredibly successful with this program. And I realized that there were 5 things that the top students from this program were doing. I'm talking about the kids that kicked this disorder in 2 to 4 weeks. And I'm going to share those with you today in a step-by-step process. And pay attention, because a lot of the things I'm about to share with you are the dead opposite of what other people are telling you. I incorporated these 5 things into our remedial classroom and I got big results. But whether you're doing these things in a school system or implementing them in your own home, the steps are the same. It's completely amazing. And now here are the 5 shifts you have to make. Now I'm going to show you. So in order to retrain your child's brain so they can be a reader as quickly and successfully as possible, there are 5 things you need to do so their brain can normalize and they can achieve in their classes in school. If you want to rewire your child's brain, then here's what you have to do. Number 1, raise the bar. This may surprise you a little bit, but something that every successful kid had while they were working to change their reading behaviors is at least one adult that raised the standard of expectation for this child and helped them to believe that with a little bit of hard work and effort, anything was possible. And I'll tell you, those kids that believed with all their heart that their hard work was a recipe for success and that this adult wasn't going to let them fail, progressed more quickly and more effectively than the kids who didn't. So let's dive into exactly what that means. Let's start with the facts. Your child has something that they have to overcome. Whether you know a ton about dyslexia already or you don't, it's important that you understand that your child's brain functions differently when they're asked to read. Entire parts of their brain don't light up right now when they're asked to perform a language task. Sometimes you're born with dyslexia, and sometimes you can become dyslexic by the environment that you're in. Dyslexia occurs in every language in the world. 1 in 5 people are thought to have it, and it's characterized as a language disorder noted by poor phonological awareness. It has nothing to do with intelligence. So it's true that in order to make your child's brain look and function like a typical reader, there's some work that needs to be done. I love this. Perseverance is a character trait that enables a person to continue to focus their efforts on a task until it's complete. You must raise the bar for your child. Help them believe that changing their brain is possible until the task is complete. And this attitude is going to kick dyslexia even faster. And kids love a challenge. Whether you tell them, hey, I want you to shove 20 marshmallows in your mouth, ready, go. They're going to do that with such enthusiasm and excitement because they love to be challenged. When you believe in your child and create reasonable, manageable goals, they will rise to the occasion. And I know you're probably thinking, Dr. Troy, of course I need to raise the bar. But there are a lot of people that don't believe this. And all of the stuff that I'm about to tell you doesn't work if you assume that somebody else is going to fix this problem for you. And that accepting things the way they are is okay. I know you may feel scared to pressure your child, or you're scared that maybe they can't do it. But what I promise you is that if you believe that, you're going to get that behavior right back to you. If you don't have this attitude of raising the bar, it isn't going to take much time before your child knows you don't believe that they can do it. It's going to show up every time they sit down to work. They'll see it all over your face. But if you set them up with this mindset that they're invincible, that they're capable of anything, if you make them feel like there isn't anything that's going to hold them down, then they're going to rise to the occasion, and there isn't anything they can't do. No one has ever become successful who's not had to overcome hurdles and obstacles. And nothing is more rewarding as a parent than watching your child achieve their goals. And I'm not saying every one of these successful kids had every person in their life believing they were capable, because believe me, what some of these kids face daily is more than anyone should have to see in a lifetime. But they all had one person whose influence was incredibly strong, who did it in an unwavering way. A person who lifted them up as they were going through this work. A person who didn't expect less of them. And that made all the difference. This is who you have to be for your child, for this to be successful. And if you aren't willing to go here, this isn't going to work. You have to teach your child phrases like, I can train my brain. This may take some time and some work, but it's going to be worth it. I may not be able to do it yet, but I will. So on the right, you can see this is the growth mindset work from Carol Dweck out of Stanford. But she talks about how important language is. You say things like, I can get smarter, and effort makes me stronger, and the more time I spend and the harder that I work is going to give me better results. And those things become true. And who knows, maybe this is the first webinar you've seen, and maybe you already had this mindset that you were going to build a relationship based on results, and you're willing to raise the bar and do whatever it takes to make that happen. But if you're not, and if this is a new information for you, if you want your child to have grit, perseverance, and a growth mindset, if you want your child to raise the bar on what they expect for themselves and for their future, then you have to be willing to raise the bar for yourself and for your child too. The bottom line is that everything I'm about to show you is designed to get the best results for your child while you're making neurological changes to their brain. So we're going to talk a lot about some cool neurological stuff and some cool brain stuff, and all of this is purposefully designed to get your child the best results. But I want you to understand that this model is built on a foundation of growth mindset and raising the bar. It's purposefully designed to not only get you the best neurological results, but simultaneously create an awesome relationship between your child and school, and more importantly, your child and themselves. But it all starts with you, your attitude, and raising the bar on what you expect your child to achieve. So not to get all doom and gloom on you, but let's talk about what happens if you don't do this. What happens if you don't change the brain of your child with dyslexia? So this condition is never going to get better on its own. It requires intense, specific help to normalize brain function. If you don't get help, your child is going to continue to struggle and see themselves as a failure. They're going to have trouble learning because reading is a basic skill required in every facet of their life. They're going to struggle to keep up with their peers, and it is the hypothesized root cause of all reading disabilities. If your child is still unable to hear sounds as they progress through all of the grades, those tasks continue to get harder and harder, and eventually there will be such a gap between your child and their peers that they may need to be evaluated for special education. It initiates a cascade of interacting achievement failures. They're more likely to get teased or bullied. And I've seen this over and over again as a high school teacher. Miss, can I get a drink of water? Miss, can I go to my locker? They're doing everything they can to avoid being humiliated in front of their peers. Some students would rather receive a discipline referral, and these are kids that don't get in trouble. They'd rather be sent to the principal's office and get kicked out of class than have to be embarrassed in front of their peers. It may lead to low self-esteem, anxiety, aggression, withdrawal from their friends, from you, from their teachers. They're half as likely as their peers to go to college. 3 times as likely to drop out of high school. 3 times as likely to be unemployed. Boys are 4 times and girls are 3 times more likely to be teen parents. They have lower lifetime earnings, and particularly with those who haven't been identified. So they go all the way through the school system, not ever being diagnosed with dyslexia and just thinking, gosh, there's a problem with me. I'm just not very smart. There's a higher prevalence of prison, addiction, and self-harm. So no matter what you've heard or what you thought was possible before, you need to know that changing the brain is possible. Even if you think your child is really far behind, you need to know that they can do this. And you also need to remember what can happen if you do nothing. Your child can do it. You can do it. And you must give your child this opportunity. You need to raise the bar on what you think is possible, and we will help you and ensure that you succeed. Which brings me to shift number 2, normalize reading behaviors. The number one reason why your child is not reading like they should be right now is that they weren't taught or given access to the type of instruction needed for dyslexia. Wow, is that a big statement? Let me read that again. They weren't taught or given access to the type of instruction needed for dyslexia. Let's break this down. So we don't come out of the womb with the ability to read. Somebody needs to teach us to do that. And it typically starts with a caring adult that puts their child on their lap and shows them how to hold a book. And you did this for your child, right? You put them on your lap, you showed them how to hold the book, which way to turn the pages, how to make meaning from the pictures on each page. And as your child gets older, that modeling and instruction is typically taken over by their teacher, when they show how to comprehend the stanzas of a complex poem or how to comprehend an essay. But none of that is going to resolve dyslexia. Not a single bit of it. Dyslexia doesn't resolve by reading more. It doesn't resolve by teaching children how to read faster. It doesn't resolve by showing them how to turn the pages or how to gain clues from pictures or how to comprehend. In order to normalize the brain for dyslexia, it requires different instruction, something more. You need to correct and target dyslexia issues at the source. So what is the source? Without getting super technical, there are 3 main regions of the brain that are used or lit up during a language task. And for a person with dyslexia, there's not much that lights up in the back of the brain. They literally have a different profile when asked to read. So as you can see by this fMRI scanning, that's functional magnetic resonance imaging, the person here on the left with dyslexia has literally no activity going on in the back of the brain. So the brighter the color, the more the activity that there is. And you can see that in the back of the brain, it's blue. There's literally no activity going on during a language task for a person with dyslexia. And when you look at a typical reader, you can see that there's activation in these back parts of the brain. The profile looks different. But I want to direct your attention to the middle, which is an image of a person with dyslexia after 8 weeks of intensive research-based intervention. The areas of the brain that light up for a typical reader are now also lighting up for this person with dyslexia. And you're going to notice that the brain has overcompensated. It's built even more connections to create new neural pathways. But the big point is that this is called normalization of brain function. Once you train your brain intensely and you normalize how the brain responds to language, you can go on to teach all of the other reading behaviors. The sounding out of words, the comprehension, the fluency, and your child can go on to achieve normally. And I've seen this happen literally thousands of times now. We've spent a few intense weeks, and sometimes for high schoolers that were really severe, it took a few months. But we trained their brain to hear sounds and respond to language, but we created those pathways. We created neural connections where there were literally none before. And it was like the light bulb went off. There was a major click. Their behavior changed, their attitude improved because they found success in doing the same reading behaviors as their classmates. The earlier you identify and start fixing this, the easier it is for your brain for lots of reasons. But studies have found that even with adults, this type of brain change is possible. But what often happens? Unfortunately, as I mentioned, the reason your child is still struggling with dyslexia is because they haven't had access to the proper brain-based training. In a survey of 250 teachers, both regular and special educators reported that they felt inadequate in understanding the foundations of reading and reading instruction. 10 to 20% reported feeling prepared. Here's another way to look at that. That means 80 to 90% of teachers have reported feeling uncomfortable or not having proper training to remediate a student with dyslexia. And despite major efforts, training on how to diagnose or remediate reading disabilities is not typically part of a teacher training program. And I know this to be true from my own personal experience. I was a middle and high school English teacher, and in my first years in the classroom, I was shocked at the amount of students that came to me that were still unable to read. I assumed that this was something that was mastered at the elementary level. And I know for myself personally, I never had a single class on how to diagnose or remediate a reading difficulty. And the hard truth is that even for elementary teachers, they're often only given one such class. And it's pre-service, meaning it's before they're ever a teacher with their own classroom. So in my own frustration, I went back to get a reading specialist certification so I could better understand how to help my students. But this is not the typical expectation. And to be fair, I know because I've worked in public education for the last 18 years that teachers are literally expected to keep track of 50 plus things an hour. It certainly isn't out of laziness or a lack of effort. But these are simply not things that are prioritized in teacher education. The good news is that the prognosis is generally good for individuals with dyslexia if you're identified early, if you have a supportive family and friends and a strong self-image, and if you're involved in a proper remediation program. But this is typically not the case. So let's take a look at what this looks like in practice. Imagine your kid is 6. They're starting to show signs of falling behind in reading. They aren't spelling well. They're having difficulty sounding out words. They're struggling to follow directions. Chances are they aren't sitting in front of someone that realizes that your child's brain needs different instruction. They don't know. Instead, they're working on their reading curriculum. They're helping your child read sight words, which is good. It's addressing the symptoms, but it's never getting to the root of the problem. But what happens if they get a few weeks of intensive remediation that specifically targets areas of their brain that aren't responding right now to language? Then new neurological connections are made, the brain's normalized, and your child can go on to have normalized reading behaviors. The bottom line is that your child's success is what you've always wanted. You need to do what is best for their brain. They need access to proper brain-based intervention to normalize their reading function. And to change their reading behaviors, you first have to go to the root of the problem. You have to change how their brain functions during a language task. And when we started giving kids access to the actual instruction that they needed, it wasn't surprising that their brains changed really, really fast. So you might be thinking, okay, Dr. Troy, I'm with you. I need to raise my expectations for my child and ensure that they can normalize their brain behavior. But how am I actually going to do that? What does it look like to get my child's brain performing differently in a matter of weeks? What has to be done? Well, you use the secret weapon, and that brings us to our third shift. The secret weapon is something I like to call the neural optimizer. It's the most powerful way to create pathways in your brain to eliminate a language disorder quickly. It creates these powerful pathways by using research-based, predictable, simple strategies. And the harder you work to use these research-based strategies, the faster the brain changes and the more your child's confidence grows. So before we talk about the neural optimizer and how awesome it is, let's talk about the old way and what doesn't work well. So we've already discussed that if your child still has dyslexia, it's likely that they haven't had access to the appropriate instruction. But let's say that you decide that you're frustrated enough and you hire a tutor. Here's what you're going to find. Often you're going to find that tutoring and box programs are not focused. And what do I mean by that? Whether they have your child working on motion graphics or putting colored flashcards together or having them work on sight words or comprehension, or gosh, there's even box programs that ask them to work on math instruction. They aren't focused on dyslexia, and they aren't going to fix this problem of helping them read faster. You do not need 100 strategies to change the neurological pathways for dyslexia. You do not need a manual with hundreds of pre-made exercises. These programs often focus on stuff that's not needed to fix dyslexia. Your child is expected to do new activities every other day. They often include a manual with pre-made exercises. And you have to ask yourself, this manual is saying that it's teaching in a diagnostic way and it's based on your kid's level. But the tutor is expected to follow all the exercises one after another because they aren't highly trained enough to deviate from the script. You don't need 100 strategies. You don't need a manual with pre-made exercises. These programs focus on stuff that's not needed to fix dyslexia. It's overcomplicated and it takes more time. And this is not something you want to take months and years to fix. So here's something that's going to blow your mind. What if I told you that normalizing your child's brain function in a few days' time could be done with a singular strategy? Remember when I told you that those kids changed their language behaviors in 2 weeks? They used the new way. One singular strategy, the neural optimizer. And here's why it works so well. Remember all those non-reading teachers that got incredible results? Well, they didn't have to memorize 100 different strategies. They got really good at the moves of a singular strategy, and the student knew how to do it. And the research-based, diagnostic, prescriptive nature is all embedded in this singular strategy. You don't need 100 different strategies or an overcomplicated approach. It's just this simple. It's a singular strategy. It becomes predictable, regular, and something that your child's brain starts to recognize very quickly. Rather than teaching the brain to start hearing sounds and then switching to a totally different activity in 2 days' time, your child's brain is able to focus and get really good at creating neural pathways. It simplifies the process so your child can create deeper neurological connections. It's like cutting a shortcut from your backyard to your neighbor's house. It starts out with pretty tall grass and it's pretty tough to find, but the more times that you go there, the clearer the path becomes. And you don't take 10 different paths to get there. You go back to the same one every time. So your child has the ability to get stronger, more paved, clearer, easier, so that pretty soon it starts to look like the path was always there. The brain is no different. The more focused you can get, the deeper the neurological connections. It's as simple as that. The neural optimizer is so simple, and it's proven. This is the strategy that we have used for literally thousands of kids. It's systematic, it's research-based, and it's focused on the parts of the brain that need it the most. Your child will identify, locate, and manipulate sounds with this strategy. So this singular strategy does go through a few phases before the brain can perform all of the language tasks that a typical reader can do. But they're landmarks, like posts in the side of the road that you can look for to tell you if you've made it or if you need to keep going. You do not need a manual. There are very obvious signposts that you can look for. So it's been known for the last 40 years that research-based interventions can normalize brain function for readers with dyslexia, but using the neural optimizer is the fastest, most focused, simplest method out there that anybody can learn to do. So I wanted to share with you the work of one of our clients, Lindsay, a 14-year-old girl who had all the hallmark traits of someone with dyslexia. She was not able to hear sounds and words, which really manifested in her spelling. She was missing entire syllables, she'd inserted letters that didn't belong, and this was all because her brain couldn't hear sounds and words. So if you haven't ever really studied samples of someone with dyslexia, you can see it really clearly right here. Remember when I showed you earlier that in the back of the brain, it just doesn't light up in a person with dyslexia during a language task? This is what it looks like. The brain is giving Lindsay literally no clues about how many syllables are in the word I just said to her. She had no idea what letters belonged there, and it's really obvious that she doesn't have this soundly in her brain. But look at what her sample looked like in November, 8 weeks after we started. I want to point out some of the words that she was able to spell and why that matters. So here's picture, founder, buildings. All of these words are more than one syllable. She was able to identify accurately all of the syllables in these words, and she also recognized the appropriate spelling pattern, and bonus, she got the words right. But Lindsay could hear sounds and manipulate them consistently over and over. She had made neurological connections. And although we weren't able to capture a brain scan of Lindsay, you can see in her samples how her brain has changed. She's retrained her brain to hear and respond differently to language, and she did it with a singular strategy in 8 weeks' time after being a below average or poor reader for nearly 7 academic years. So at this point, we know that you have to raise the bar, normalize reading behaviors, and use the secret weapon, the neural optimizer, to change the brain and improve your child's reading quickly and effectively. Now let's take a look at how these training sessions will go so they're as effective and efficient as possible. And that brings us to the 4th shift, which is embrace repetition. So I know I mentioned this before, but the more intensely you can focus on this, the faster it goes. In 2 to 8 weeks' time, your child's brain could be normalized. The severity of how dyslexia is expressed is dependent on the environment. Success doesn't come from what you do occasionally, but what you do consistently. Mastery is achieved through deliberate practice. So what we know from the increased brain scanning equipment technology of recent years is that you can alter your brain to do almost anything. You can alter your brain to be more positive. You can alter your brain by learning a foreign language. You can alter it by learning music. You can retrain your brain and your body connections after a stroke. You can even alter your brain if you're a London cab driver and your job is to memorize the map of the city. Even this is found to create an increase in the visual spatial part of these drivers' brains due to the amount of times these drivers must go over and over the city map. If you practice something consistently, you're likely to alter your brain to associate its structure with whatever you're doing. The best way to stimulate the brain and activate the neuroplastic response is through repetitive motion. Heavy repetition of certain movements or activities will retrain the brain and force it to create new neural connections and pathways. If you practice something consistently, you're likely to alter your brain to associate the relevant parts of its structure. So here's another example of where this was true. Remember I told you that those teachers kept coming down and saying, what is happening in this reading classroom? Well, my high school reading students needed a lot. They not only couldn't hear sounds and words, but they weren't very fluent, and they couldn't comprehend either. And so we focused our energy around 3 core strategies that we did over and over repetitively. The kids knew what to expect, and so did their brain, and they made remarkable gains. You do not need a million strategies. You need a few really good ones that your child can get really good at. So the bottom line is that changing your child's brain is possible. Changing it quickly is possible. The harder you work and the more you practice this, the faster things will change. And that brings me to the 5th shift. Invest in mentoring. So you aren't going to change your child's brain yourself. A mentor is someone that can support you in doing that. Don't go it alone. This disorder has its challenges, and it can be tough to navigate as a parent. A mentor has gone before, who has the experience to tell you about the pitfalls that you're about to make or the struggles that you might experience. You're investing in a support structure for you and your child from someone who's done this before, who's helped other people achieve the same thing that you want to achieve. You've got a team of people, your own personal network, to ensure that both you and your child succeed. We're here to answer your questions and ensure that you and your child are on the right track. Everybody should have a mentor because it gives you new ideas and accountability. You find the best mentor out there and you pay what it takes to work with them. So I personally have had mentorship in almost every facet of my life. So every time that I wanted to change something about my performance, whether it was in education or my mindset or something like a physical activity, it was transformational for me and it completely changed my performance. Coaching done well may be the most effective intervention designed for human performance. Everybody needs a coach or a mentor. Get a champion and a cheerleader behind you Invest in a reading mentor. Ensure this disorder goes away quickly so your child can get on with achieving their dreams. So today I promised you that I would talk about how to make significant neural changes and literally rewire the brain of your child with dyslexia and prevent years of unnecessary struggle in school. We talked about how your child can get ahead of their peers in reading, even if they historically struggled with reading performance. We talked about how to use 5 simple steps to retrain your child's brain without worrying if they were getting this type of support in school. We talked about how to simplify this process, get focused, and create stronger neurological connections so that these issues can be resolved more quickly. We talked about how to have a better belief system for what's possible and the work that needs to be done to succeed. I know we've talked about a lot of stuff today, and I've shown you a lot of new ideas. We talked about how to raise the bar, how to normalize reading behaviors, use the secret weapon, the neural optimizer, embrace repetition, and invest in mentoring. You know that you must start by first believing your child and raising your expectation for them. You actually have to target the areas of the brain that need to be remediated for this disorder to be remediated quickly and get incredible results through the neural optimizer, where you'll create strong neural pathways through focus and repetition. And finally, I've shown you the benefits of connecting with experienced people who are looking out for you, who are committed to the success of you and your child. And now you have a choice. You can either take the information I've given you and forget all about it. You can pretend your child isn't struggling with reading and you don't know what to do. You can continue to hope that the school is going to step in and solve your problem, or ignore this and pretend that this disorder is going to fix itself, which you know isn't true. You can watch your child continue to struggle unnecessarily, give up on their dreams, and have a lesser quality outcomes for their life, or you can get committed and start working to make significant neural connections to rewire your child's brain and get rid of this disorder once and for all. You can get focused and get mentorship and support so you and your child have the support structure needed to make brain changes quickly and effectively. You can get amazing results for your child and change your life while you're in the care of a team who won't let you fail. And if that's what you want, then here's what I have for you. My team and I have set aside some time in the next 48 hours to speak to you personally about how you can apply these ideas to improve your child's life starting today. Whatever your biggest challenges are, we've seen it and we know how to overcome it. On this session, we'll get on the phone with you for about 45 minutes and we'll work to craft a step-by-step game plan to determine if your child has the traits of dyslexia, if they're truly a candidate for this treatment, figure out where they're at with their current performance and struggles in the classroom, and then discuss a game plan to get you enrolled and starting to normalize your child's brain function as quickly as possible. And the cost? Absolutely free. But here's the catch. This is not for everybody. If this is going to work, you have to care deeply about your child and be so committed to their success that you're willing and open to learn new skills to get the job done right. You have to be willing to dedicate the prescribed time and proper procedures. There are no shortcuts. You have to believe that success for your child is possible and be willing to create a positive, encouraging environment in which they can thrive. If this is a miserable experience for your child, this is not going to work. You have to create a positive environment. And you must have the right mindset about this work. If you're defeated and believe that this isn't going to work before you even start, this isn't going to work for you. And if you are all of these things, if this is you, book a session now. So why are we doing this? The ability to read is paramount to having a successful life. And there's a lot of misinformation out there about what's possible, and I am compelled to be the change. I have wanted to positively impact the life of children, and that has always mattered to me. Plus, I know how much you want success and happiness for your child. So we offer these calls to give you more insight and clarity than you've had in a really long time. And we talk to ensure that it's a good fit for both of us. And if not, that's fine too. When you click that button on your screen, you will see a calendar page, and on that calendar page, you'll see all the available appointment times that we have to do a call with you. Just choose whatever appointment time that you want and go ahead and book that call. We'll call you at the time that you chose. Then there's a short application, like 5 or 6 questions. I guarantee you it will be the best hour of your life that you could possibly spend helping your child succeed in reading. But here's the thing, guys. Spaces are really limited. There are a lot of people watching this presentation, and there are only so many hours of the day. So click the button at the bottom of this page, get your spot linked now, and let's have that conversation. This could be the conversation that changes your life or changes your child's life. So think about your goals and whatever it is that you are trying to achieve for your child. We would love to help you get there. But you've got to click that button. You have to book that call now. Thank you for watching this video today. I'm Dr. Rebecca Troy. Book your call, and we'll talk to you soon.